the fact that we have, through the difficult summer that we've undergone, that you have stood by us, stood by the truth, and spoken the truth. Every time I come to the UN, I try to tell the truth as it is. But here's a picture I didn't show in the UN yesterday. You see this? This picture? Can you see it? This is an impending execution. But this isn't ISIS. This is Hamas. And during the recent fighting in Gaza, right around the time that ISIS was doing its grisly deeds, Hamas executed dozens of Palestinians just to impose fear and to force the population of Gaza into submission. Now, it's true there are some differences between Hamas and ISIS. For example, ISIS beheads people, and Hamas puts a bullet in the back of their heads. But to the victims and to the victims' families, the horror is the same.
A surprise was also in store for Netanyahu. A day earlier at the UN General Assembly, he emphasized the dangers of Iran's involvement in terror, illustrating the point, he said, to say Iran doesn't practice terrorism is like saying Derek Jeter never played shortstop for the New York Yankees, a reference to the recently retired Yankee captain.
I have your Derek Jeter official Yankee shirt.
At a meeting with UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon yesterday afternoon, Netanyahu took the opportunity to complain about the double standards adopted by the international organization in its dealings with Israel. According to the Prime Minister's office, Netanyahu questioned the UN Human Rights Council's decision to refrain from investigating Hamas activities during the recent war with Israel. Topics discussed by the two included the Israeli-Palestinian peace tract and the Syrian civil war. Speaking at the UN yesterday, Oman's foreign minister called to act immediately to solve the Israeli-Palestinian crisis. He described the Palestinians as genuine peace seekers and accused Israel of never showing any responsible cooperation, opting to resort to military activities to achieve its goals. On his return to Jerusalem, Netanyahu will be under pressure to decide whether to take the initiative and follow through on his words to garner the support of moderate Arab nations to facilitate peace between Israel and the Palestinians, or whether he will let the ongoing stalemate continue. Margot Dudkevich, IBA News.
For the umpteenth time, the issue of the continued U.S. imprisonment of an Israeli spy, Jonathan Pollard, will be raised at tonight's meeting between President Obama and Prime Minister Netanyahu. Officials in the Prime Minister's office say that Netanyahu will plead for the release of 60-year-old Pollard, who is now in his 29th year of incarceration and is reported to be in poor health. Pollard has been imprisoned for an unprecedented number of years compared to any other person convicted of spying for an allied nation. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu neglected to include the words Palestinian state in his recent speech to the UN General Assembly, but former President Shimon Peres told CNN that a two-state solution remains the cornerstone of Israeli policy.
If I would be talking to an Arab statesman, even somebody well-disposed toward Israel, what he, I think, would say to me is, yes, Arabs and Israelis could be friends, but Israel has to give the Palestinians a state.
I agree with him. I think we have to give to them the state. I don't have the slightest doubt about it. You know, I'm either too young or too old to pay too much attention to what people say. I would rather see what they do. And maybe in the conversation, some people will say this and that. But the official position and the real desire of Israel is to have two states, an Arab state and a Jewish state. And I think that's also the conclusion of the Arabs.
Now, you know, Egypt is internally convulsed. Iraq is internally convulsed, battling ISIS, and Syria is in free fall. Does that reality mean that Israel is more secure?
In a way, yes. You know, actually, there are no really more armies, and I don't think there will be more wars. It's being replaced by terror. It's a different sort of a conflict. Usually you had two armies, one won, the other lost, but now you have hundreds and hundreds of small terroristic groups. They don't have a policy, they are more of a protest. They don't have it tomorrow, they are going back to yesterday. And they became the real problem for the Arab world more than for Israel. And we stand informally, and in the future it will be more formal, at the same front against terrorism.
Do you believe that as a result of this relations with this common enemy of terrorism, relations between Israel and the Arab countries and Middle Eastern countries are inevitably going to get better?
Undoubtedly, in my eyes. You know, we live in a global world. I'm not sure that the globality had it in mind or planned it. The fact is that globality put an end to racism. You cannot be global and racist, finished. You cannot be global and even nationalistic, finished. Globality doesn't hang on power, but on goodwill.
The Israeli-Palestinian issue is not on the mind of President Barack Obama as he heads into his meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu. That's the view of Middle East expert Dr. Mordechai Kedar, who told me a short time ago that Obama will not make an effort to get the peace talks back on track.
I'm not sure he will succeed, and I'm not sure to what extent he tries to do it, because he knows that this is not the main issue today in the Middle East. If he could just shove this problem off the table, he would do it long ago. He has many, much more problematic issues in the world, like Ukraine, like the Islamic State, like the Ebola problems, some islands between China and Japan. He has so many problems, in addition to the American problems, the health insurance and all these things, which he tries to also to solve. Believe me, the Israeli-Palestinian problem is the last thing which he would like to deal with.
Prime Minister Netanyahu said he intends to garner the support of moderate Arab states to help push the peace process forward. What chances are there of his succeeding?
I highly doubt if it can work, because look, the Middle East is full of dunes, and the dune change their location according to the wind. Today the wind brings these dunes like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the Emirates, more or less to the side of Israel because of various problems inside the Arab world, especially the status of the Muslim Brotherhood, which Hamas is part of them. Tomorrow the problem will be different, and Israel will not be the favorite, neither of Saudi Arabia or the Emirates. So we cannot build our future on fashion, naming Saudi Arabia role against the radical Islam or Islamic organizations like Hamas and so forth. We have to build our future on something totally different, on deterrence. This is something which we are in charge of, not the other, or the policy of Saudi Arabia or other Arab countries.
Dr. Kedar, after Palestinian President Abbas accused Israel of committing genocide, what prompted such a remark that clearly ends any chance of a return to negotiations?
Well, he is trying to harvest some support after it was more than clear that Hamas today is the favorite in the Palestinian street. However, Israel should remind him that the founder of the Palestinian national movement, the Hajj Amin al-Husseini, took active part in the extermination of no less than 500,000 Jews from Hungary who were brought to Auschwitz when he recruited Muslims from Bosnia to guard the bridges on which the trains took the Jews to be exterminated. And we, Israel, unfortunately, we do it very little. We do not remind the Palestinians about their role in extermination of the Jews of Hungary. If we did it more frequently, he might be more cautious about accusing us of being mass murderers, or as what we said.
Dr. Mordechai Kedar, thank you so much for being our guest.
My pleasure.
Shlomo Chich Lahat, the legendary mayor of Tel Aviv, has passed away at the age of 86. Called Chich by all, Lahat's funeral will take place on Friday at the Trumpeldor Cemetery in Tel Aviv. Chich was the mayor of Tel Aviv from 1974 until 1993 and was considered a dominant force who changed the cultural makeup of the city. During his tenure, the Cinematheque, Suzanne Dalal Center, and the city's Seaside Boardwalk were all created. Chich was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease 5 years ago. He died last night, surrounded by his family. Police escorted several Jewish families past Arab protesters and into their newly acquired homes in the eastern Jerusalem neighborhood of Silwan. One police officer was lightly wounded in skirmishes. There were no arrests. The 7 properties are near the capital's old city, and they were purchased by Elad, an organization that uses funds donated by supporters abroad to buy property in Arab neighborhoods of the city. Some 90 Jewish families, totaling about 500 people, live in Silwan, among an estimated 50,000 Arabs. Palestinian officials denounced the move as a Jewish land grab designed to alter the character of the city in an area that they insist will be part of the future Palestinian capital. The properties were all legally purchased, but some were bought from Palestinian brokers for an inflated price. Arab residents complained that they sold their properties to Palestinians from outside the area, not knowing that they were going to be resold to Jews. Turning abroad in northern Iraq, Kurdish and Iraqi security forces continue taking the fight to Islamic State. In its effort to break the ISIS hold on Sunni territories, Kurdish officials say they have taken control of the Syria border town of Rabia. The Kurds have also been making progress in the Nineveh province, where Mosul is located, and which is the largest city under Islamic State control. At the same time, a coalition of Iraqi army, Shiite militia, and Kurdish forces have been slowly taking control of Sunni villages that had been under Islamic rule south of the oil-rich city of Kirkuk. Forces on the ground credit the intense Allied airstrikes with helping to push back ISIS. The British Air Force launched its first attacks against Islamic State in Iraq since Parliament approved combat missions against ISIS. Tornado warplanes conducted an armed reconnaissance mission and arrested Turkish troops in the northwest of the country. U.S. aircraft struck in Syria and Iraq, hitting weapon storage facilities and ISIS vehicles. And it was a day of violence in Baghdad, as at least 35 people were killed in a wave of car bombs and mortar attacks in the Iraqi capital. It was one of the most violent days the capital has witnessed since U.S.-led forces began bombing Islamic State insurgents in August. The Sunni ultra-radical ISIS is believed to be responsible for the bombings in Baghdad, which targeted Shiite areas. The attacks included several car bombs and mortar fire believed to come from farmland north of the capital. The Turkish parliament is considering approval for cross-border military operations in Syria and Iraq. The move comes as battles between Islamic State insurgents and Kurdish militias continue to rage near the Turkish border, and mortars have fallen inside their territory. Turkish tanks and armored vehicles have taken up positions on hills overlooking the besieged Syrian town of Kobani. Parliament is due to vote tomorrow on a proposal that will allow the armed forces to take action against ISIS, Kurdish, or Syrian government forces. Turkey has also declared that it will defend the tomb of Suleiman Shah, grandfather of the founder of the Ottoman Empire. Located in northern Syria, Ankara regards the mausoleum as sovereign Turkish territory. ISIS routinely destroys shrines and tombs of other sects, and Turkey says it will defend the site at all costs. The wife of ISIS British hostage Alan Henning has appealed for her husband's release. At the time of his capture, the 47-year-old taxi driver was working in Syria on an aid convoy en route to a hospital. His wife begged the terrorists to show mercy.
I have a further message for Islamic State. We have not abandoned Alan, and we continue in our attempts to communicate with you. I have had no contact from Islamic State holding Alan, other than an audio file of him pleading for his life. Muslims across the globe continue to question Islamic State over Alan's fate. Their position regarding his statement is unequivocal. He is innocent. Some say wrong time, wrong place. Alan was volunteering with his Muslim friends to help the people of Syria. He was in the right place, doing the right thing. We are at a loss why those leading Islamic State cannot open their hearts and minds to the truth about Alan's humanitarian motives for going to Syria, and why they continue to ignore the verdict of their own justice system. Surely those who wish to be seen as a state will act in a statesmanlike way by showing mercy and providing clemency. I ask again, supported by the voices across the world, for Islamic State to spare Alan's life. Alan, we miss you and we're dreadfully concerned for your safety, but we are given so much hope by the outcry across the world as to your imprisonment. I ask Islamic State, please release him. We need him back home. Thank you.
Just how bad are things for the civilians in Syria? The UN Security Council heard a briefing yesterday that included a warning of dire consequences in 2 months' time when relief funds from the World Food Programme are expected to dry up.
Millions are short of food, of medicines, and almost 3 million children are not in school. 11 million vulnerable people inside Syria require urgent humanitarian assistance, and of those, 6.4 million people are internally displaced. Many have been displaced several times. Sustained access to provide the most basic assistance to some 4.7 million people who have been hard to reach for months, some for years, continues to be a major challenge. And a further 241,000 people are deliberately besieged, mostly by government forces, and are denied assistance. Each month that passes sees more people denied their basic human rights. Without additional funds, the World Food Programme will be forced to end its operations completely within 2 months. Rations have already been cut in order to continue to reach as many people as possible. Winter is fast approaching, and vital supplies are needed to protect people from the cold. Neighbouring countries also need urgent support so that they can continue to shelter millions of refugees. But most critical of all, the violence that has already killed over 190,000 people must stop. Thank you.
Back here at home, if something doesn't change very quickly, patients in the country's government hospitals will find themselves without life-saving drugs and medical equipment. That was the word from hospital management, which warned of a major crisis within a few weeks' time. With 3 months left until the end of the fiscal year, the medical centers report that their budgets have run out. The head of Asaf al-Ofei said that the facility is short some 18 million shekels, while management at Rambam Hospital told media that without an immediate cash injection, they won't be able to buy antibiotics or other life-saving drugs. The health ministry said that they are in discussions with the finance ministry to try to find a short-term and eventually long-term solution. The Israel Postal Workers sanctions today expanded into the transportation and tourism ministries as the negotiations between the Histadrut and the finance ministry continue to falter. In addition to the ministry strikes, registered mail will not be delivered, nor will any post reach government ministries or embassies. The sanctions are over the fate of some 1,500 post office workers that the government wants to lay off as part of its efficiency plan. There will be no oil drilling for now on the Golan Heights. Afek Oil and Gas received a temporary injunction from the High Court of Justice in response to a petition by Adam Teva V'Din, the Israel Union for Environmental Defense, and a group of local residents who opposed the operation. The Northern Regional Planning and Building Committee had approved a plan for exploratory drilling that was supposed to have begun this week. The project involves 3 years of work through 10 wells. The petitioners fear the drilling could pollute the groundwater and cause underground fluctuations. The Afek company is run by former Minister Effie Etam, who said that efforts to stop the project will not succeed. A distressed pregnant lioness and 2 lions are receiving medical care in Jordan after their transfer from a zoo in the town of Beit Lachia in the Gaza Strip. Officials said that the 3 large cats suffered from trauma following the 50-day war between Hamas and Israel. Scores of other animals were injured or killed during the fighting, the officials said. Hearing of the animals' plight, Jordan offered to provide relief. The animals were transferred from the Gaza Strip to Israel and then on to Jordan. The project was coordinated by the Four Paws Animal Welfare Organization. The 17th Israeli Music Festival is now underway. Concerts and other musical performances will appear in Ashdod, Jerusalem, and Tel Aviv. Each year, an Israeli composer is chosen as the focal point of the event. This year, the late Alexander Oria Boskovitz has been given the honor. Today and tomorrow evening, the concerts will be at their final destination, Tel Aviv, with a special performance in memory of Boskovitz by the Israeli Philharmonic Orchestra at the Israeli Performing Arts Center. The performances are free of charge with advance registration. Today, the music festival takes place at the Tel Aviv Museum with concerts all day long until the evening hours. Taking a look at local finance, and the shekel strengthened in foreign currency trading while share prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange were down. Here's a look at the late afternoon numbers. A slight drop in temperatures is predicted tomorrow with chances of light local rain. Here are the highs and lows for the next 24 hours. And that's all for this newscast. Please join us again tomorrow at the same time on the same channel. Until then, I'm Laura Cornfield. Have a good evening and shalom from Jerusalem.